I think one thing I also experienced was a living funeral. Have you heard of that? Have you? No, you've not heard of it.
Is it like someone having a funeral when they're still alive?
Yeah, in a sense.
I've heard about it actually. I've heard about it.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Clean Your Toilet podcast. I am Theresa Goh and I am a former Paralympic swimmer. I swam for 20 years before retiring in 2019. I recently went back into competitive sports, so I started taking up shooting. I'm working full-time at the Singapore Disability Sports Council and doing a lot of things that I should have probably said no to. And with me today, I have Susan.
Oh my God, I so admire your introduction. I don't know how I can beat that. So, hi, I'm Susan Chen. I'm a PhD researcher, a HR practitioner for almost 20 years. I'm a mother of a 5-year-old, and then I'm also a business owner. I run a boutique HR strategy consulting called Co-Grow.
See, I could say the same.
No. You got a lot going on there. I love it.
There's so much energy. Yeah. Okay. Today, I think we have a couple of things that I think we could talk about, but I think something that I am recently kind of maybe going through is the phases of identity. You know, just I mean in life, just always going through different phases and almost changing labels and identities at certain points, not being a mother, suddenly being a mother. I think all this creates some sort of, not like disturbance in the field, but like just uncertainty or discomfort, right? How do you do you feel that, or have you navigated, how do you navigate that?
Wow, I think there's a few pivotal moments of identity shift. And I think, motherhood is one, right? Becoming a mother 5 years ago. And I think starting my own business was a huge sort of identity shift, because before, if you ask me how to introduce myself in a networking setting, it's very simple, right? Hi, I'm Susan. I'm the head of HR for, and then there's a company. And you're like, and people say, oh, yeah, I get what you do. And then, you move on to the conversation. Now, it just feels like so multifaceted when you no longer have like a organization's brand that somewhat represent who you are, your associational values, okay, I run my own. And what does that actually mean, right? Doing things as a little bit out of the norm. What does fractional head of HR mean? How do you do this effectively? People always ask, does that mean you're part-time? Does that mean that you're not as committed? So I think when you talk about identity that they generate more questions, I think is something I'm navigating. It's not just an identity, but people's interpretation of your identity. Exactly.
I think it depends on which phase you are in. Sometimes certain things relate to different people, sometimes say being an owner of a business may be something that somebody else is super interested in, but then somebody else is has no idea what that means, and then they're more interested in your label as a mother, and also how long I guess you've held on to that status. I think it really is such an interesting thing, because then different people have different views of you at different points, right? And I think like sometimes it's difficult to navigate when you again come across that same person who met you at a different time in your life, and then you're like, I'm not that, maybe not that person you met, or maybe I am the same person, but I had this other part you didn't see. I think it's challenging sometimes for people, because they don't really realize the fullness of how intersectional human identity is. Like you can be this, but you can also be that.
The multidimensionalness, I think, of us as humans, sometimes we forget when we just talk about identity.
Or it's just simpler for people to understand. If like they know you, I mean, for me, I think people have known me for a long time as a swimmer, and I think since kind of announcing that I was in shooting, people get a bit confused, and then
it's like two very different sports.
Why?
How does that work?
Why don't you go back to swimming? Because it's tiring. Like, I think it's just also interesting for me to be able to step into something that I've almost carved out an identity for myself, and then kind of exiting and coming back into it again and feeling that space again. And I think especially after I quit or retired from swimming. A lot of people feel like there's a loss of identity because of letting go of something you've held on to for so long.
Yeah.
And that can happen in any time, You could be a director of a company for 20 years and you could be let go. A company could close down and you lose that identity of self, I think that makes it challenging for the person. And I think that's where I feel like there's such an importance of knowing who you are beyond your name, your label, who people think you are. Do you know who you are? Yourself,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
And when we introduce ourselves, it's quite interesting, right? Because even with the podcast, we're like, let's introduce ourselves. We talk about the things that we are doing or we have done, right? Swimmer, retire, or I'm, a mother. I used to be working as a practitioner in-house. We don't start by saying who we are as a core human being. So I almost think when we ask people to introduce ourselves, we expect a certain level of superficialness in order to connect rather than going super deep,
Because it is, I guess, necessary, to first tackle the top, the superficial, because I think as much as it could be interesting to know the core of somebody, I think it's not realistic.
Yeah.
You can't really, and not everybody wants to kind of divulge the inner being so quickly sometimes. Some people are less open to it, and it's just easier lah. Sometimes.
Sometimes we'll have to do the easier thing before you can connect deeper.
Exactly, yes.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Because I heard you just said, people say, why do you retire from swimming? Or why don't you go back to it? I think that was a question. I'm like fascinated with that question. Like, how do you deal with that? When people say, oh, you retired from swimming and now you are shooting. Why don't you go back to swimming? I mean, how do you work with questions like that? It's fascinating.
I understand it because it's a comfort level, right, for people, and what they've known me for is this identity of swimmer. They'll probably, long after this shooting career, will probably still stay with me, to be honest, just because of the length of which I've been a swimmer. And it's interesting because I feel like, again, people find it hard to let go of the past label. I think a couple of athletes in the past have changed sports, and they've always been known as the original sports more. Whether it's because they were maybe not as successful in the new sport, or it's just retention for people, the public, right? I don't know. But for me, it's just interesting. And I think I maybe on certain occasions feel slightly annoyed because I'm like, I still get people asking me if I'm competing next or competing in an upcoming competition, which is funny. But then like when I've been asked that for like 30 times, then it's a bit like because I've retired. Like, it's almost like a refusal of accepting my retirement. Which I have different feelings on different days about it. I think I'm okay. I mean, when talking about knowing who you are, I think I know myself pretty well. I'm comfortable with who I am, without all these labels and people kind of, if they forget about me, I'm okay. It's fine. I am comfortable. I'm secure. So all these, I guess, taking on different shooting or different personhoods or who I am, I think it's just a phase or like a time in my life where I'm interested in trying something, I can kind of take out the label and put it back on, and it's at the moment it feels like that, but I think it's also dependent on the time, and maybe next time I'll feel differently. I think we're all evolving. I think the way I feel like I am myself is, if I'm always evolving, I don't think I'm the same person 5 years ago. I feel like we're always changing. If we're always learning, we're always changing, don't you think so?
And I sort of definitely resonates, because I think coming out, doing my own business for the last 2 years, people still ask me, would you ever go back to corporate? Right? Like, why did you give up corporate? People, you had a great career in corporate for 18 years. Why would you choose something else? I think it's interesting how much people connects. I feel like our identity and how people accepts our identity change almost sometimes is a mirror and reflection of their own experiences, right? They are projecting their own fears or just generally their own experiences. I remember even my mom being like, doing your own business sounds really risky. Why would you, leave the comfort of a security, having a job and so on. So
why would you put yourself in an unsafe position?
Yeah, it's kind of like how much is a reflection of the people interpreting your identity, your choices, and how much it is a acceptance of the journey that you go through.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. It's a projection of self, right? I think I think that could be why. I think they're wondering why I left swimming, which is I was doing not too badly. I wasn't really on a decline, but I was ready to leave. I think a lot of times also then it kind of shows when people see public figures or people that maybe they've not really they don't really know closely. It's just a view of your superficial self again, right? And they think that you're happy, you're successful, you're, all this and that they also maybe put themselves in there and like, I wouldn't change this for the world,
Yeah.
And it's true in another world, maybe in another life I wouldn't, maybe in another time and space I would be still swimming, who knows? I could, but like, I think a lot of it also for me, it's very much internal. So like, I think when I was thinking about retiring, I definitely looked at both logic and feeling. And logic was that I could continue maybe for another few years. But feeling was that I didn't want to.
Yeah.
I think the crux of everything in life is to do what I, as much as I can, want to do.
Yeah.
And I think that makes it a lot more sustainable. I think in life when we get to do something that's fulfilling, that is what we want, and maybe also does good to the world, that helps, right? I think it's a whole like combination of different reasons for why we choose to go through life a certain way.
Yeah.
And I think it's not everybody can feel the same way. I accept that not everybody will want to be fulfilled. It's fine. Like, I think we have to get past also the idea of wanting to tell people that this is a certain way to live their life because we don't want it to happen to us, I don't want people to tell me you should do this or do that, And in the same way, I don't tell people that you should live life like this or that. Yeah. And I think the idea of this life that we only have one of, I want to be as happy and fulfilled as I can, and it's so as simple as that, isn't it?
So tell me a little bit more maybe about your timeline, right? So how long have you been swimming and how long did it take to make the decision to shift, and how long have you been doing your new
shooting? I swam from when I was 12 maybe.
Wow.
So 20 years later I retired at 32. Am I right? Yes, 32. Math is not my strong suit. So 32, and then that was 20 years of competitive swimming.
Wow.
And really just focusing on swimming most of the time, 90% of the time, and then getting into a job after that because I felt like that was a point I then kind of needed to support myself financially and go and earn a living, and then at some point I think I really didn't think I was going to go back into competitive sport because it does take quite a lot out of a person, and it requires discipline and commitment, and I definitely didn't think that I would go into a new sport, whatever it was at the time, and just be blasé about it, just like just play, there's an aspect of fun to it, but if I wanted to commit, which I do, I have to be serious about it, and I have to be sure about my priorities, and I think that's why it took a bit of time to kind of consider it. There was an element of kind of going with the flow a bit because I didn't force certain things, and I think when I tried out laser shooting, it was fun, and then kind of just going into different experiences and kind of almost doors being opened to me and just going through the door, and realizing actually it's quite fun, and then people offering opportunities to me to come and try and shoot and train properly, and I took it. It's just different steps and different doors, and you just have to go through the door sometimes, and then trying out shooting for about, was it a year or so? Not even a year. I think I'm approaching 1 year of shooting, and I am not too bad at it. I think coach says, or I don't know, she might be biased. But it's been fun. It's been interesting. It's been different from swimming, because swimming is so dynamic and physical, right? I think that's the part also that makes me unable to go back into swimming. That's how physical it is.
Yeah.
My body is not the same. I can't anymore. Like there was a time I could do 13 sessions of training a week, and this is not the time. I can't do that anymore. I think it's just been again, not too much thinking, to be honest, just a lot of feeling and gut. Like, is this pulling me in the direction I want? And I think feeling of almost the path of least resistance for myself. Like, it's not even whether the opportunities are offered to me, it's how do I feel, you know?
Yeah.
That's how I kind of let myself be guided. Have you tried shooting?
I was gonna say, like, I have no idea. I don't have very good eyesight, so I don't think I can aim very well.
You don't actually, surprisingly, don't need that good of an eyesight.
Really?
Yeah. It's about confidence.
So what is the trick? What's the trick?
It's about aiming in the aiming area.
I love your advice. Aiming in the aiming area. That's a great starting point.
You need to come down and try, though. I think it's at Yishun, Safra.
Okay. I was gonna say I didn't know there's places, and
shooting. There's air pistol shooting, and air rifle shooting, and usually it's at Safra and Yishun and Tampines. Yeah, but like, text me later if you do want to come down. I think it's very interesting, and it's not the typical like sport, right? Do you? I mean, do you run? Do you?
I mean, look at me. I'm not.
No, you look like you run.
I wish. The most sporty thing I do right now is Pilates and chase after my son.
Pilates is a lot. Okay, Pilates is so difficult. Okay, don't kid me. And I think it's just the idea of how sports should be. Yeah, physical, but shooting is so mental.
I can imagine it being very mental.
It's very much a mental thing, and the most physical you do is lifting your arm as many times. But I think it's for me just also the idea of a different learning. I want to learn new things, and I think shooting just gave me that opportunity, and I took it, you know, and I'm still learning. You know, it's so different for me to kind of be a competitive athlete for 20 years, kind of putting that behind and then coming back into it as a newbie after 20 years, you know, in a different sport. And it's so interesting. Yeah, it's interesting, you know. Yeah, but I mean, it's also like a see where it goes kind of thing.
Are you competing right now, or are you planning to?
I am planning to compete. I think it depends on selection and qualifications and stuff like that, as sport is. But I do want to try and see where it goes, you know. Yeah, but I don't know. I'm not trying to like put pressure on it and set timelines and stuff like that. Not yet, really. You know, I want to see how it goes. I want to see how far I can go and test my limits a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, we'll see.
Wow. Shooting. Now I know there's places to go in Singapore to try.
Yeah. It's text me later. I'm quite interested to know about the privilege and systemic barriers of it. Like how you feel about privilege. Because I think for me, right, I do think about my own privilege quite often, and I'm not remiss to the fact that a lot of things that I do in my life, being able to choose certain things, is because of the privilege I have. And I think if you ask me, compared to a lot of people I know, I feel like I'm extremely privileged. You know, disregard, I think, the disability. Like, honestly, everything else, and my disability to me has been quite smooth. Like, don't ask my parents. My parents had the hard part.
I'm like, wow.
No, honestly, I don't feel like I have had much challenge. My parents really faced a lot of that for me. Yeah, so I'm very thankful for them, grateful for them, because they went through the hard part, you know, and I wasn't really conscious for that part. I was like baby, you know, and once I had a little bit more consciousness, things were really settled already, in a sense. Yeah, and I think it's because of the way they set things up for me. And then I think that to me is then the result of my life now, and how privileged and lucky and how many opportunities I have, presented to me. But then I also think about how this isn't a common life for a lot of not just disabled kids, but like just people in general. Like I feel like there's a little bit of guilt sometimes about just how much privilege I have, and doors I have to open for me, or opportunities and choices I have, that I don't know what to do about sometimes. Yeah.
It's fascinating you say you feel guilty, right? So a little bit, about me. I'm from Taiwan originally, and I grew up in New Zealand. I moved to Singapore to start my sort of global Asia career when I was 26, and been here for 12 years. And in between, I was in Indonesia. And I think to your point, right, having the privilege to make choices. But one thing, if I may say, I don't know if it's unpopular opinion, Singapore itself is a bubble. This is not where most people have the same experience when we talk about potentially the disabilities, your access to resources, Singapore being so clean, the crime, just even those basics. Yep. What we consider as basics here is a privilege around the world, right? Exactly. So that privilege, I think that coming from a non-Singaporean, I absolutely can sort of like resonate to say this place is a privileged place, but I find the guilt really interesting. So I want to sort of like double click on that a little bit, right? And I say that in the utmost, for in case the listener hasn't realized, we met for the first time today, yes. Right? So as a human being, I will, before I know about your background and being a competitive athlete, of course, from a physical sense, I see, right? I was like, oh, this is going to be a really interesting journey of like my struggle in life. And no, you're sitting here telling me I am so privileged, I feel guilty. And I'm like here checking my own privilege and my own biases. But I think is I'm really curious from that perspective. A lot of people who probably has more privilege in the outset would not feel that same sense of guilt. So I'm super curious of that guilt.
Yeah, I mean, I only had like a few minutes to Google you.
You had a head start. I did.
Unfair advantage. I mean, for me, I realized just the visibility of how I present, and sometimes, I mean, the wheelchair is very obvious, right? But I think, is it obvious? Yeah. I think it's also then understanding wheelchairs and the types of wheelchairs, sometimes maybe I'm a bit more sensitive to it. I notice that different wheelchairs have different types and different brands. And if chairs, mine is a really expensive chair.
Okay, now you tell me. Okay, it's the Dysons of the chair.
Yeah, the Ferraris. It's also then understanding that, and I wouldn't have been able to afford this really, I think, if I were not as privileged as I am. I think the interesting thing about that, right? You say a lot of people on the outside seem to have more privilege than me, but I think I also think about privilege as a deeper thing. The base of where you place the privilege. Like, is it more privileged to be able to walk, but have no support systems, or no family, no friends, compared to maybe somebody who cannot walk and has all the love in the world, I think it's depends on how you view the privilege and how you view happiness, right? I think Singapore is so lucky.
Singapore is very privileged.
I will not say we don't have our problems. We do, of course. Every place has it, but I definitely am reminded a lot that we are really lucky here. And I think from a disability standpoint, we are really lucky and privileged and resource heavy. A lot of our people in other countries, our neighbors, may not be as lucky, and as have as good a life, maybe, infrastructure, the just being able to go to work or school on your own. I definitely think the privilege started from young. Like, my parents, we were a distance away from my primary school, and again, we had the resources and privilege to be able to move a little bit nearer to opposite my school, so then I can go to school on my own. But that again unlocked other things, right? It unlocked independence for me. Just by having that extra ability to move nearer, I can now go to school on my own, and then unlock the ability to feel independent, be independent, and not feel like I need to depend on other people. Being able to build my home, the sinks or the light switches at certain heights, unlocked independence for me. It's all these little things that I also think about how other people may not have that. And it's not that, like, if they were maybe born in a different family or different country or different space, they would maybe have as maybe be better off than me, So yeah, I think privilege is such an interesting, kind of complicated topic sometimes to think about, just the nuances of it and the different parts where maybe your life could have changed if you were this or that and born here or there,
Yeah.
I think it's just, it's such an interesting topic. And again, because you've been to so many countries, you get to see also the real differences of it, right? Yeah.
And I think one thing is sort of privilege being multifaceted, right? They are part of privilege that, to a certain extent, we're our own creation of our own privilege and experience. But in reality, a lot of privilege comes from the choices that people have made for us, or the choices that we were being afforded to, like where we're born. But I thought what you said was really interesting is, where do you root your sense of privilege, right? How do people find that root of that sense of privilege? I'm curious, how do we navigate that? Because I almost feel like without that root and anchor, this is where people, I think, can feel a little bit lost in their own being. So how do we find that root of privilege?
That's so tough. I think different people will root it differently. I mean, I won't say that people would automatically understand when I say that being able to walk is not automatically more privileged than someone who can't walk. I think sometimes the depth of which we have understood disability or the impact of disability is such that people will, no matter what, see a wheelchair or a person who's disabled and automatically think their life is worse off, nature of society, I think it's up to ourselves to kind of acknowledge that and want to change that. I think it's hard to just kind of dictate that this is how we should think, right? I think different people think differently, and I think makes it interesting to be human beings on this earth. Everybody's a bit different. But yeah, I think if they can kind of be able to just sit and understand, how do you think your life is more privileged? What is privilege to you? What makes you think that you are then a rung above the others? Is it your way of thinking? Is it your vast amount of wealth? Is it your inability to get sick? Is it your your ability to make friends with anyone? I think it's all the different parts that then allow you to think about your own value also, because I think in the end, like, it might then root to how do you value yourself? How do you put value on you? I think it's maybe the root of it. Then maybe everybody is not, or everybody is privileged. Everybody is not privileged,
No, I mean, sometimes, the way you sort of describe it at some moment is also, how do we linking that to gratefulness, right? How are we grateful for our experiences, our sort of choices that either have been made for us, or then the ones that afford us to make certain choices? I love the stories about unlocking, right? Like, I haven't thought about it in that way, but you're right. It's sort of each of step of those privilege or those actually unlocks all the other somewhat the privilege, right? So there's a very fascinating journey.
It's kind of like I kind of put it back to maybe being an ally. I think for you as a mom, you have the potential to unlock so many things for your kid. As other parents will have the ability to not unlock certain things for their kid, and I think it's could be too stressful to think about just the impact of it, but I think we all have the ability to unlock something for everybody else, whether it's being an ally. I think to your parent, to your kid, to your parent, to your friends, I think there's always the ability to do something for somebody, and I think that is more powerful than we realize. I think you don't realize the true effect of a chain reaction of something you can't even see years from now. Something that you did now has an impact 10 years later to somebody you will never meet. I think the vastness of that is can be overwhelming.
Yeah. No, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Adaptability. It's like I just throw one word out, like, or
sure,
rather,
tell me more.
Or rather, what do you think is the most important thing? One or two things that are most important for a person to have to go through this life.
Wow, to be adaptable. When I think adaptable, so I think for the longest time being in HR, one of the things I'm most fascinated is about human potential.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, constantly that unlocking, how to unlock potential. And sometimes we get too focused and say there's so many different skills, right? You can have better communication skills. And I realize fundamentally, though, I think the cornerstone of adaptability or be able to do that, I think is growth mindset and curiosity and also grit, right? So I think if I imagine someone says there's like 2 skills or 3 skills I want the next generation or my kids, or us as adults to develop, I think is that, right? How do we super hone in on unlocking and practicing our own curiosity and grit? I think sort of that's and probably a starting role of adaptability.
Yeah, I agree. I think these days, like as I entered the working world, I think a couple of years ago, before that, only in the swimming world, I really didn't have much to think about, right? And then once I entered the working world, it was so different. Different people, different departments, the structures of work. And it was interesting to me because I think I did manage to carry over some of the things that I learned as an athlete, which was a lot of adaptability that helped me to become a good athlete. Carrying that over to work really helped to me. I think, and then I see the people I work with or the people I have to work with in other companies, and how some of them may not have that as much adaptability potential or capacity, and then they get stuck in feeling of frustration because they can't change, or they can't change the other person. And I think they're just so stuck on an idea of what they want this outcome to look like, and they are unable to manage when there's flexibility or ability to understand that not everybody's gonna go your way. I think grit for sure, ability to kind of stay the course.
Stay the course when things are not going well.
Always so hard to do sometimes. And I think what was the last one?
Growth mindset, sort of that curiosity, grit, that sort of type of things, I think connects together to adaptability and resilience.
Yeah. I think all of it to me is, I wish we could teach that in schools more than like theories.
No, okay, math is important.
Math is important.
Okay. Kids, if you're listening, study math. Yes. Math is important.
I do a lot of budgeting now.
I do a lot of budgeting now as well.
It's so horrible.
Math is important.
I spent half an hour trying to budget on one thing. I was like counting this. Yeah, so math is important, yes. But I also really, really wish we had a lot more of these soft skills that could really place a bit more importance over some of the other things. Honestly, I don't really use algebra anymore, but math, as a whole. But I just think as people going from school to becoming young adults and adults. There's so many things that I am a lot more comfortable with now because I'm an adult. But I wish I had more. I was more comfortable being able to express or talk about or be right when I was younger. Just soft skills of human interaction, resilience. Being able to understand the importance of communication, adaptability, that people are going to be different, all these different things that I do think some schools are trying to put that in events or workshops and stuff like that, but it's not part. I don't think it's part of the curriculum.
No.
So I think it's
because we don't know how to make exams out from curiosity
how adaptable
and resilience, right?
Like out of 100, I think.
How do we do that?
Yeah. I think there's too much focus on certain things, and wishful thinking for me. I think to see a little bit more the human learnings to how to be a human being, if anything, Yeah.
I mean, I absolutely think we need to learn how to be more human, especially now with the age of AI, right? How do we even write in a way that connects? I mean, I love it too. I use it on a daily basis, but I actually think how do we use that to make us even more human? It's kind of like that balance, which I don't know we have yet thought about how do we integrate that in education, right? As a next step. Versus, I know for some schools, I've been reading how some kids now think AI is cheating because school says you can't use it because that means you're cheating. Versus, how do we integrate that in our life, in our education, so we understand moving forward? Because the world, I don't think we'll ever go back to a world without it now, right?
We're too far in.
Yeah, we're too fast and too furious. And then how do we then make sure talk about adaptability, right? Is our environment. Because we kept saying human have to be adaptable, but human create a system around us and our system being adaptable. I think those are fascinating to see how the next generation is going to respond to these adaptability and resilience and the needs of that shift.
Yeah, I mean, it's so fast the way things are moving. My parents are trying to catch up with the times, and my niece and nephew are already way ahead. I think it's again, I think it's about balance. It's about understanding that this is a train that you cannot stop. How do you again be adaptable and kind of use it to your advantage? But even just thinking that something that somebody has said, like AI is cheating, and not being able to kind of use critical thinking and understanding that's not what they mean, It's about how do you fully understand the whole thing with context, without context. I think comprehension of something, I think also takes time and maturity to be able to fully understand something, but AI is so helpful but so scary, it's something I am looking forward to see in the future, because I think with as a disabled person, right, AI is actually really helpful, and I think about how technology is on certain extremes is good and bad. It makes things a lot easier, makes certain maybe groups of people lazy, but technology is so amazing for a disabled person. I have a friend who cannot communicate verbally, but they use a tech that is able to communicate on, and it speaks for them. Imagine if technology didn't exist, they would still be stuck in a space and a life where they wouldn't have their thoughts expressed, and their parents wouldn't know what they're saying, and they wouldn't live as full a life as they could, the potential of it, right? But it's again, how do you not abuse that, right? How do you not abuse technology? Unfortunately, humans as humans are, abuse will come. I think even though humans do, we as a society do create some of the most amazing things that exist, we also are the bane of it. Like we are the reason why it's also not going so well in certain aspects, right? And why things go bad sometimes. And it's a balance of things,
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's like even actually in the during COVID times when everybody was at home, it was actually amazing for me because a lot of the places I used to like to listen to spoken word poetry and stuff like that, and a lot of times these would be held in places with steps, so I wouldn't be able to access it. But then when we went to COVID, all these were being brought to the digital realm.
Yeah.
It was online. I could finally listen and listen in and buy tickets, and it was suddenly accessible to me, And I think it's so interesting to just think about the accessibility of spaces that become fully accessible to some people once it's digital.
Yeah.
And like on the flip side, like it's bad if everybody goes online only, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's not easy to think about how to balance such things, because to a group of people, this is the most amazing thing that existed, and it creates freedom for them. To another group of people, it's limiting their ability to go outside when they could,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing about living, right?
Yeah, and that's kind of going back to earlier what we were talking about, rooting that sort of privilege, but that sense of privileges can be quite easily shift by your environment change, right? The privilege of walking and going out, now that looks very different during COVID, right? The privilege of being able to speak your thoughts, that looks different now. There's AI and technology. So in itself, privilege becomes something that is not necessary as unchangeable. I think people, when they think about privilege, it feels like that's the given. Things cannot shift away from either you're privileged or you're not, right?
Yeah.
Versus this different rooting point and different accessibility to those privilege, which makes it a much more fluid. And I think I like concepts that are much more fluid, to not say, there will be certain things you're super privileged and then certain things that you may not. And how do we sort of find that balance and find that accessible point for us to be grateful about, actually.
Yeah. I mean, just even the idea of gratitude, I when I hit 30, I suddenly was hit with the midlife crisis.
You're gonna call 30 midlife crisis? Wait, how old are you now?
I'm 38. Okay. Yeah. Can I ask how old you are?
41.
That's not that far. But I was really struggling at 30. Just because I think at that age, 30 seems so far away. And for me now, 40 seems it's nearer than 30, right? But I didn't, it's a certain point where you just don't think it's going to come. To me, in my head, I was like, 40 is so far, 30 is so far. But then suddenly it's here. And then to me, I was just kind of hit with the gravity of it, and oh my god, I'm 30, and truly I didn't know how to really get myself out of the funk for a bit, and I was just constantly thinking of my mortality. It was really dramatic, but and again, like I have to say, like, just even being able to think about my mortality in a space where I'm so safe, and I really have nothing to worry about, is privilege in itself, right? And I think I was just figuring out how to manage that whole thing. So what I came up with, and I think I did a bit of search online on how to manage this midlife crisis anxiety. So one of the suggestions was to write a gratitude journal to kind of center yourself in the what ifs, take away that, and what you have. So what ifs and becomes what I have. And I spent about the next 30 days really writing a gratitude journal every single day. And it really helped. I was less anxious, but also was able to truly just look at my 30 days of gratitude and what I have to be thankful for. And really, really reading it and like kind of realizing, what am I worried about? I have all this going for me. Life is good. So I think gratitude journal really helped me, just occasionally. I think people could use a bit more of that. I think nowadays when we are stuck in this space of constantly running and just going, there's no stop, and that's so dangerous also, because you don't get to really slow down And when last time I hear people say, stop and smell the roses, like it seems so light. And only now I'm realizing actually that had such meaning to it, and it's so important to think about what you have and not just look at what you want to have in the future. Yeah.
That's a great advice. I think that answers our question earlier even, right? How do we, anchor our point of privilege? And I think, again, coming from the point of all the things that we can find space to find gratitude, that's sort of kind of a nice anchor to, access our privilege.
Have you ever written a gratitude journal?
I was just sitting there thinking, have I ever? So for someone who loves writing, so I used to write poetry and short stories. Funny enough, I've never written like a gratitude journal. I don't think I have enough conversation with myself. Like I don't ever write like diaries, but I love writing. So it's I was actually, as you were talking, I was like, oh, I bet she's gonna ask me that. And I've never done one.
It's interesting to kind of be able to dig so deep, because you really have to ask yourself, like, what am I grateful for today? And maybe you'll start today.
I mean, I think about what I'm grateful for, right? But I guess the act of writing that acts as a different, deeper sort of side, right?
Yeah.
But now you've gone through, you say 30 days, right? Does it become deeper, or would it go opposite? As in, like, at some point you're like, I'm thankful for everything else. So today I'm thankful for the cup of coffee I have. Like, I haven't gone through that journey. It's like, what is the right level of gratitude?
Yeah. I think it's so interesting, to wonder what's the right level of gratitude to have, right? I think I did stop after 30 days because I thought it served its purpose. I started because I was feeling really anxious and worried, and just a feeling of darkness. So I thought after that I stopped because it was okay. I'm occasionally I do go back and read that just when I need a reminder, and kind of to feel that feeling again of sense of peace and calmness. But I think something that changed really after that was that, not in a very bad way. I do think about my mortality still every day, and just how short life is. Yeah. So I do keep, I guess, an element of gratitude with me every day, just a bit, just to remind myself that life is really short, and do things within reason that makes me happy, and that I won't regret. Life is, I have to do certain things I don't like still, but it's still a level of do it with a desire to. Like I don't do things that I really don't want to do. I try not to have regrets, because it's not a nice feeling to have, right? I think if things happen and they don't go the way you want, that's a lesson. It's not really a regret per se for me. And I think with that kind of mindset, it really helps to move through life a little bit more happy, a little bit more peacefully, Yeah. But I think just the topic of death, right, is something that people are really afraid to broach. Yeah. What's your thoughts?
I mean, I don't think people necessarily think about it again as deeply, right? Until, of course, like a few years ago, there's a unexpected death in the family. I think usually when you encounter something like that, that's when sort of I was forced to think about death in that sense. I do think about death a lot more now being a parent, because I think now you feel like, what does that mean? One thing's, what legacy do I leave in the world in a very, grand sense, but more, am I preparing my child for being in a world, being independent, being a good human? Am I sort of living through what my legacy through my parenting? But also now I'm 41. I feel like I'm much closer to, like, you used to think, I would never be 40, right? You used to think, 30 is really old. Yeah. And now I'm 41. I think when I was 30, I was like, oh my God, you were a child. You haven't even been mature enough to make these decisions. So definitely at around now, I'm a bit more aware of maybe not the ultimate death, but the path to the death. In many ways, I think even physically be like, okay, I need to take care of myself, my physical self more so I can age better, but age better not in a way that I want to look pretty, actually age better in the way that I want to make sure I can continue to be a active participant of the society.
Totally,
right? In that sense. So maybe I think about aging more than death, but... tell me about what you say you think about your mortality. I mean, what does that mean?
I mean, it's a pretty generic sense that I think about death, not in a sense of dying, but in a grander thing of like understanding that there's a shortness to things, and to not ultimately get to that point and have regrets. Maybe that's what I mean, you know. I don't really think about the death part because truthfully no one really knows when that's gonna come. It could be tomorrow, next week, 10 years later, 20 years later, but I think it's just for me it's a reminder to self, right? To be grateful, to do things you want now, to not wait for the right time, to check in, you know. Sometimes I do a little check in with myself. How's life going for myself? I'm always talking to myself. How is life going for you? You know, other things you want to change. If you were to die tomorrow, sometimes would you be happy? You know, I think it's like, to me, it's how things are important but not, because everything's important to you, but it's not important to somebody else. You know, I think it's the idea of how the smallness of your life compared to the world. It's going too deep now, but like,
no. I mean, I think that is great, because I don't think we necessarily always have the space to sit down and think about that, right? And have a productive conversation about it makes sense.
It's also, I mean, the importance or the interesting way of how you have to be kind of confronted with the idea of death sometimes. Like you said, you're forced to think about it when it happens, or, you know, I think in the same way it's like people think about certain topics when it matters to them. I mean, it's human nature, right? And that's why I, even though I try and remind maybe the people close to me or my family or my friends that it's important to really just enjoy your life as much as you can. Nothing is truly unsolvable. Everything can be handled, you know. Do what you want. Don't regret stuff, and remember that your life is yours, you know. I think it still is not fully understood until you do, you know. I think you can't force someone to understand something until they really do. So it's something that maybe I do I recognize, that I think about more than maybe the general population. But I also think it's a bit of the fear of thinking about it. And I will admit I'm afraid of it, you know. A lot of us are afraid of something we cannot control. And I think
you're afraid of death?
Yeah. Just the idea of not existing.
Yeah.
And I think it depends for certain people, you know. Some people have religions that they think about reincarnation or going to heaven or going to a better place. But for me, I believe we don't exist anymore, you know. And I think I enjoy life so much that I don't want to not exist, you know. And I think that's the scary part of it. Yeah.
I mean, that resonates a lot about enjoying life and this idea of not existing anymore. And then this non-existence is interesting because there is death, as we very not so morbidly talk about today. But, you know, there are more people in the community that I've been reading or stories about, like Alzheimer's, right? People forgetting. And, you know, I actually had a conversation with my husband. I said, if I lose my memory, I'm no longer me. And that is, scary. I think, an interpretation of death.
It is, yeah.
And I think then you have to let my body go. And he was refusing to have this conversation with me, right? But the existence of us sometimes is not just the physical being, right? It's like, you know, we enjoy our life, our ability to have thoughts and interactions. So the fact, I think what scares me most, not really is dying. I think what scares me most is existing as a physical being, but not being here mentally.
Yeah. I get it. Yeah. I think it's in itself also a version of dying.
Yeah.
You know, you no longer exist.
Yeah.
Even though your physical realm or self is still there, your soul is not, your consciousness is not, you know. I think it's scary also because if people are so, like family, friends are so afraid to talk about it, and then the day does happen, it's harder to kind of embrace or understand because you never gave it a chance to be discussed, you know?
Yeah.
And I think a couple of months ago, I was doing a program on death and dying. And I got to kind of visit a place where was it a funeral home or something? And it kind of being kind of confronted with that realness and reality of that space that exists and will eventually have to go when I'm no longer here. You know, it's scary, but also made it a lot more calm for me because it was something that I finally got to see and I got to touch the kind of the coffin and stuff like that and see for myself and I don't know, it's sometimes a lot easier or it's a lot scarier to think of something and imagination just goes bigger or worse than it could actually be when you see it, it's nothing, you know, it's reality, it's a solid thing, it's understanding and embracing that someday will come lah, you know. But I do think it's just it's a wave. So sometimes I'm okay, sometimes I'm not. And it's about telling myself every day that there are things that are not within my control.
Yeah.
And to do what I can with my life until that day comes. And then to not have any regrets on the way to that path, you know? Yeah, but I just don't know how to kind of make it more okay for my loved ones to talk about sometimes. Yeah, some people are just more okay to talk about that.
Yeah,
it's not
I don't think I can get my family to talk about. Not really. I mean, I can't get my husband to commit to, you know, like if I lose myself, I think you should pull the plug. You know, you have my permission. You know, he was like very against it.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think with my parents being older generation is not a topic, right?
Yes.
People think is not a very good topic to talk about. The words, so no, I don't think I have sort of learned to confront that conversation in a way that could be productive or therapeutic, right?
I think one thing I also experienced was a living funeral. Have you heard of that? Have you? No, you've not heard of it.
Is it like someone having a funeral when they're still alive?
Yeah, in a sense.
I've heard about it actually. I've heard about it.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I had a version of that.
For you?
Yeah. But not to the, like, I tried to change it a bit because my friends are still not too
They're not ready for that?
That confrontation of it. So I changed it to like a kind of a living funeral for my past life as a swimmer, you know? Because I had just kind of retired.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So it was easier to kind of accept and confront. But I do know a lot of people who do living funerals, especially when they know that time is coming and whether it's terminal illness or whatever. And it's such I think a good but also modern way to look at death because everyone in the room will know that there is a reason everyone is here. Yeah. They will have to confront the sadness that comes. But I think something that really helps, potentially, hopefully, is the closure. Because they get to tell this person how they feel and the goodness of things and not leaving things unsaid, you know? I think that really helps to bring a bit of closure to things, you know.
Are we meant to invite people that has wronged us and want them to like make peace of the crap they did while we're still alive? Or is it actually only reserved for loved ones? I just want to get the rule of the game out there.
There's no rules here. I mean, that's a very interesting way. I would think that some people would do that.
I'm just saying, you know, since we're talking about it, you know, making a guest list, I kind of want to confront uncomfortable situation, you know. I'm like, X person.
Remember that time?
That did not. 20 years ago you did that. I'm still not happy. I'm dying.
Say sorry.
Better say sorry. But maybe sometimes, I mean, in all, jokeness aside, I mean, we do hold these feelings with us, right?
Yeah.
They live within us that, those memories of certain things that just maybe hasn't been resolved. And if we talk about your living funeral, right? Like, the way it's termed, how much of it is saying goodbye to the loved ones. To a certain extent, they love you. There's things that and then there is how much that in our unresolved life that we need to let go. I don't know, because I could think of people I will like to invite.
I hear you. I think it is. It's a balance of being able to help people let go.
Yeah.
But also just being able to say goodbye, I think truthfully there will never be enough time, to have. There will always be more time needed with the loved one. And how do you then best navigate this loss? It's again like being able to truly say goodbye, even though these people love you.
Yeah.
Being able to maybe invite the people who don't love you.
They just don't know it yet, okay?
You love me, tell me
you
now.
love me. You just don't know it yet.
Yeah, but it's the idea of giving opportunities to say goodbye. I think that may be the ultimate reason for why these living funerals could be helpful. Yeah. In the end, it was really interesting. It was a scary kind of confrontation to have because I know, even though I knew it wasn't about my actual living funeral, it was still kind of an idea of it, right? And it was really emotional. It was really touching. I wrote a letter to my siblings. They wrote one back. Everyone was crying. And I think also then the idea of crying and emotions, I think human beings, some of us are so used to walls and not being vulnerable. And I'll be first to say vulnerability does not sit well with me. It's not to the point of crying, I think there is a tip over effect, and I am only willing to be vulnerable to a certain effect. And then after that I'm like, no, wall. And I think that's fine also, right? Because like humans have boundaries, I think as and I have my boundaries vulnerable to this point. And maybe it's not necessary to just reveal your whole self to everybody, But vulnerability, I think, is something we all struggle with sometimes. And I think it's from generational kind of thing, generational feelings of not being able
needing to be strong.
Asians or whether it's, And I think it translates, and I see it better now. Like I think a lot of younger parents are a lot better at talking about emotions with their kids, big feelings and stuff like that, right?
Yes.
And it's great because then you have a whole group of people or children who are more willing to talk about things and not hide it and not have to project their feelings to the world, Yeah, I think it's a good thing to at least progress and see from generations of hurt parents.
And to a certain extent, having access to those emotions feels sometimes like a privilege as well.
Yes.
To be able to have
feel.
those to feel and then be surrounded by people that you love and then to have those conversations.
That's a real privilege.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. So we have come to the end of this podcast. To close things off, I thought maybe we could share one thing we're grateful for before we end. I go first.
Sure.
Okay. I think one thing I'm really, really grateful for is the people I have around me. I think I wouldn't be who I am without them. Super grateful for everybody who's just lifting me up more than maybe I deserve sometimes. So yes, my gratitude for today.
My gratitude for today, I actually am very thankful for being trusted to be invited into this conversation. Actually, again, the setting of it being that is being trusted to have a conversation with someone about death, about identity, and I feel very grateful for having the opportunity to do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Likewise.